Kevin Young earlier tonight. 1-1 to Giles. Tries to shoot a breaking ball to left field. It's out of play. 1 ball, 2 strikes. You know, the Pirates are a surprising ball club offensively. They're 6th in the league hitting .275. They're 3rd from last in homers. Only the light-hitting Padres and Marlins have hit less. But they're tied for 3rd in runs. There's a funny-looking swing and a foul ball. They've scored 337 runs this year, putting them in the top 3 in the National League. And the thing about this young ball club, they seem to have very timely, very good situational hitting. And you got to credit Lloyd McClendon with that. Breaking ball low and away, 2-2. And as Rick mentioned earlier tonight, Jason Kendall and company, outstanding game plan against Kevin Brown last night, attacking him early in the count and early in the game. 2-2 pitch. He hung one upstairs, and it's a base hit to right center. Carlos Perez just does not have the ability to throw the ball by anybody right now. That was an off-speed pitch, hanging up high. And coming up Sunday night, John and Joe with a big battle of bats. Manny Ramirez right now leads the American League with 74 RBIs and 17 homers. And you know all about Griffey Jr., 24 home runs. And he's right behind Manny in RBIs. The balls could be flying at the Jake this weekend. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball presented by Gumma, the Mariners and the Indians. Our national game of the week for you Sunday night. Don't forget, log on to ESPN.com. Part of the network. Go.com. And a breaking ball fouled by Kevin Young. I mean, Rick, he is out there trying to trick every single batter.
He simply lost confidence in his fastball. Even though they're hitting the fastball hard, you've got to continue to throw that pitch. You've just got to change your location.
Kevin Young hit by a pitch first time up. Carlos Perez missing way up high. 1 ball, 1 strike.
Top speed tonight, 88 miles per hour, and that coming on that last fastball. And we all know that you can kind of trick that gun from time to time. Anything that's elevated is normally going to have a higher reading on it.
1-1 pitch. Up and away. If you're going to throw in the 80s in the major leagues, your ball better sink or move.
That's always been the key to me, Bobby, when you evaluate a major league fastball. It's not always radar that's important. It's when you get a good hitter like Kevin Young and you can throw the fastball in the strike zone and there's a swing and a miss. It doesn't always need to be velocity.
2-1, and Young slices it back.
And you can see that fastball right there. That was not a swing and a miss. That was a guy that just missed. Sometimes it's late movement on a guy's fastball. Sometimes it's just his delivery that's deceptive. But when good hitters do not put the bat on the ball in the strike zone, you've got yourself a major league fastball.
Well, a good strike to ball ratio so far, but a lot of those strikes have been hit by the Pirates. Here's a 2-2. Popped up by Young as he got jammed. Angel Pena going back. Outstanding young defensive catcher takes it for the first out.
When I look at the team ERA of the Los Angeles Dodgers, 4.53 coming into tonight's ball game, it's just so hard for me to believe. The ball normally does not carry here at night, and just like we saw there is a tremendous amount of foul territory for pop flies like that to be caught.
Now, there won't be as much of that next year. Dodger owners are going to renovate the ballpark. They're going to add some seats, some more dugout seats down there, and the stands will be closer to home plate next year. How about the home runs? Almost 3 a game at Dodger Stadium this year. 91 in 31 games. Jason Kendall, sac fly for his 35th RBI earlier. An average of 2.94 a game. That's more than 1 per game more than last year. Now, Raul's had a bunch of those. He's at 19 total. I mean, everybody's hitting. Center field bleachers that hit on the roof and bounced out of the ballpark. In batting practice, Mondesi and Karros and Sheffield routinely hit him on the roof. Two balls and no strikes. Used to be a pitcher-friendly ballpark here. On a night like tonight, no breeze at all.
I'm telling you, for years I watched Garvey and Say and Dusty Baker hit them as far as they could, and they weren't going that far.
And a breaking ball, off speed, fouled. Jason Kendall, 4th leading hitter in the National League.
Going up into the first couple of rows of those blue seats there, but out of the stadium, never.
Yeah.
It's the new baseball. Some people say it's the new lacquer being put on the bats nowadays. It's almost like a small, thin coating of aluminum. I hadn't heard that before, but a couple of weeks ago in Seattle, Lou Piniella was saying that. The bat's different.
Remember that old movie? Are we sure they're not putting flubber on the bats this year? I mean, the ball is just jumping everywhere. Last Wednesday night in Colorado, we had 10 home runs in a game when the Rockies and the Mariners got together. 2-1 pitch. Blowing inside, ball 3.
This is more typical of a Jason Kendall at bat right here. He had to be smiling after that last at bat. So he popped up to the first baseman. He slammed his bat. He was as frustrated as he could be. But Brian Giles tagged on that pop-up and scored. It went down as a sac fly and an RBI.
On a ball maybe 200 feet down the right field line. Breaking ball, flied out into short right center. Devon White broke back, now comes in, plenty of time. He never looks like he's in a hurry. Rick had a chance to sit down with Davey Johnson earlier today, and Davey talks about the increase in home runs at Dodger Stadium.
Ready, Garcia.
I think we're using metal bats or something, but the ball has been jumping here. The ballpark, I don't think it's as big as it was when you pitched here. I think they must have moved the fences in. But the weight program these guys are on the ball, we're making too many mistakes as a pitching staff, but there have been a ton of home runs hit here.
Yeah, they made so many mistakes as a pitching staff. They got the pitching coach fired. Charlie Huff is gone. Claude Osteen takes his place. And because of a death in the family, Claude not with the ball club tonight. He was an outstanding left-hander for the Dodgers. Jim Benedict right now, up from the minor league organization, to act as the pitching coach for now.
Yes, he is the minor league pitching coordinator for the Dodgers, taking some time off to fill in until Claude Osteen can rejoin the team.
And that's not the only change the Dodgers have had in their coaching staff. They've done some flip-flopping in the bullpen and at third base. There's a breaking ball in there from Perez. No balls and 2 strikes to Freddie Garcia. Next half inning will show you their new third base coach, who was the bullpen coach, who managed the ball club last year.
Sounds like a soap opera that they film out here in Hollywood, doesn't it?
Whatever happened to This was the most stable franchise. There's a curveball down in the dirt. 1 ball, 2 strikes. Freddie Garcia popped up to second his first time up. One ball, 2 strikes. Garcia gets fisted. Little flare out to left, and Sheffield is there. So for the first time tonight, the Pirates fail to score. They strand their third base runner, and an encouraging inning for left-hander Carlos Perez. He leads off when we come back. The Pirates lead 3-0.
Cleveland Indians tonight. Let's take a look at how they were able to come back against the Oakland Athletics. They scored 4 in the 8th, 1 already in the 9th. Omar Vizquel with a game tied drives in the winning run, so they get 2 in the bottom of the ninth after scoring 4 in the eighth. Billy Taylor, 16 saves coming in on the year. Can't get it done here, and Cleveland wins it by the final score of 9-8. We're now going to take you to Los Angeles, the Dodgers and the Pirates.
Thank you, Bill Pito. Bottom of the third inning here at Dodger Stadium. Bob Carpenter, Rick Sutcliffe. Pirates lead the Dodgers 3-0, trying to beat them for the 8th consecutive time. Carlos Perez has just bounced out to start the third. Back to the top of the Dodger order for Eric Young, then Jose Vizcaino. Pirates got 2 in the first, and RBIs by Brian Giles and Jason Kendall, and an RBI base hit by Mike Benjamin in the top of the second. So far, a good outing for Francisco Cordova. Into this ball game, 2-2, ERA of about 5, but he's been pretty solid his last couple of times out. Last 3 starts, 2-0, with an ERA of 1.89, and a swing and a miss by Young. Eric in the hole, 0-2.
Last 3 years for this young 27-year-old right-hander, his wins have gone up, innings have gone up, and his strikeout total has gone up. The only thing that's gone down has been his ERA.
Line drive, right center. Over there to cut it off, Jose Guillen with a good hustle play. Holding Young to a single. That's important with his speed. And the Dodgers have a single in each of the first 3 innings.
Well, we've talked about the lack of range on the defense of the Los Angeles Dodgers. That's not the case with Pittsburgh. They make a lot of over-aggressive Take a look at the youngster right there. He has got some special tools. It's just somebody getting the reins on those things and keeping him under control.
Jose Vizcaino, 1 on, 1 out. He pulled the ball first time out and bounced out to second. Cordova with that sinking fastball missing down and away.
I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dodgers score here in this inning. After getting pounded last night 11-1, and then all of a sudden the Pirates 2 in the first, 1 in the second. By putting up a 0 on the top of the third, the offense of the Dodgers can finally take a breath and relax.
Eric Young at first, 23 steals in 31 attempts. Third most steals in the National League behind Roger Cedeno and Tony Womack. Cedeno, the former Dodger, Womack, the former Pirate. Over but low, ball 2.
You don't hear a whole lot mentioned about either one of those guys from either team. I thought the Pirates might miss Tony Womack, his speed in that leadoff position, but they say no. They say they're all right without him.
Arizona needed his speed in that lineup. They were pretty much a station-to-station team last year.
And how about the way he's played defense out there in right field? Much better than they anticipated.
Yeah, not bad for a guy who played second base in Pittsburgh.
I still find it hard to believe that the Dodgers gave up on Cedeno, though. This kid's speed is just electric, and I saw him from deep right field a couple of weeks ago gun out somebody at home plate, so a strong arm to go along with those strong legs.
2 balls and a strike. Eric Young back to first. Davy Johnson desperate for some runs. His Dodgers last 7 times against the Pirates only scoring 3 runs a game. 2 balls and a strike. Runner going. Swinging a foul as Vizcaíno tried to shoot one to left field. That's one way to revive a struggling ball club. In fact, a lot of people out here sort of feel the same way about the Dodgers as they do about the Lakers. A lot of individual talent, Rick, but where's the teamwork?
A lot of big name stars. Everybody gets their points. There's offense. There's hits from time to time, but not a whole lot of scoring in the clutch, and no such thing as team defense.
2-2 pitch. Out of play left side.
The Lakers doing almost the same thing that the Dodgers trying to do when they hired Phil Jackson, as the Dodgers did with Davy Johnson. This guy has been nothing but a winner since he became a full-time manager in the major league. 10 years, his team has finished first 5 of those years, second the other 5, never lower than second. He also played on a lot of winners when he was a player as well.
More on Phil Jackson tonight on SportsCenter. Big press conference here in Beverly Hills today. Bring that triangle offense here. 2 balls and 2 strikes to Vizcaíno. Runner going again. Ground ball, well placed. Diving is Nunez. No play. And a base hit all the way for Vizcaíno. So the Dodgers move the runner and get the Pirate infield moving around. And they've got 2 on, 1 out. Gary Sheffield and Raul Mondesi coming up.
Yeah, but Bob, we talk about the lack of range on the Dodgers. It's the range that the Pittsburgh Pirates have that keep this game scoreless as far as the Dodgers are concerned. A terrific speed on the part of Guillen to hold Young to a base hit. And now look at Nunez right there. That's just effort right there. That's just desire in a young man wanting to knock that ball down and keep Eric Young at second base, not letting him get to third.
Gary Sheffield.
the base on balls. Not a lot of guys that hit third and fourth will let you walk them with runners in scoring position. They don't get paid. There's no stat for a base on balls here.
Unusual to see him hitting so poorly with runners in scoring position. Breaking ball by Cordova, low and away, ball one. Gary Sheffield's a free swinger. Probably swings as hard as anybody in the game.
Stands right on top of home plate, and he's got that elbow pad, which it seems like more and more people are going to. It's almost like they dug up Sir Lancelot, and they're using all of his gear right now. Look at that elbow right out over the inside corner.
There's that sinking fastball, but he misses low and away, 2-0. So the Dodgers put hits together for the first time in this game and mount their first offensive threat. They've been out hit by the Pirates 5-4 and trail 3-0.
This will be a big pitch right here to tell whether Gary Sheffield is just pressing and expanding the strike zone, or possibly the Dodgers being a little bit selfish. Cordova doesn't look to want any part of Sheffield here. We'll see if Sheffield helps him.
There's a breaking ball. Looked like it caught the plate at the knees, but ball 3 called by Jerry Meals. And Cordova's got to be wondering where that pitch was. That's a pretty good breaking ball right there. You want to talk about why runs are up, just say, have a look at that pitch. If that's not a strike, pitchers are in trouble. 3-0 to Sheffield now. Fastball in there. Francisco Cordova. 27, he turned on April 26th. 4 years in Mexico, including 28-4 his last 2 years there, 94 and 95. His 4th full year with the Pirates, and as Rick said, a career high 13 wins last year. Sheffield fouls it on a pitch down and in. Cordova can be had when he has to go off the stretch. With men on base, opponents hitting a league worst 347 against him when men are aboard. His overall opponent's batting average is 290. He'd love a ground ball right at somebody here with first and second, one out. And a 3-2 pitch. Will Johnson move the runners? They're going. Long one. Left field. See you later. And the Dodgers tie the game.
Of Gary Sheffield. Last year he had twice as many walks as he had strikeouts. If Cordova was not going to throw him a strike, he was simply going to take the base on balls and let Mondesi do the damage. He came in with the breaking ball, he elevated it, and Sheffield politely deposited it in the left field stand.
Breaking ball in there to Mondesi. Gary Sheffield's 14th of the year. His RBI total shoots up to 41. He's well over 300 now. And he hits the Dodgers' 70th homer of the year and another Dodger Stadium home run. Mondesi pops this one up. Mike Benjamin under it. 2 outs. Rick, I got to go back. Since he hit that home run on the 3-2 count, that 2-0 pitch where Cordova threw that outstanding breaking ball that appeared to be over the plate, Jerry Meals did not give him the call. That really turned around that at bat.
Well, it told Cordova that if he wanted to get Sheffield out, he had to elevate that breaking ball a little bit. He did. Sheffield liked it. It was on the inner half of the plate, and we're back to where we started with a tie ball game.
Eric Carroll's locked up on a breaking ball way outside. Cordova's given up his 6th homer of the year in 38 innings, a 3-run blast, and Carroll steps in. He singled his first time up. You make a mistake to Gary Sheffield, it'll usually go to the bleachers or the bullpen out there. Pretty much a dead pull hitter. 1 ball, 1 strike. Another curveball.
Well, your point about the lack of success for Cordova with runners in scoring position, you can see the difference right now. He's much more comfortable out of the windup as opposed to the stretch, and his location is better.
How about that 2-0 pitch to Sheffield? A pretty good-looking breaking ball by Cordova. Here it is, Rick. This was called ball 3.
You know, if you walk that pitch in there, that's pretty much where you would want it to be.
So it's possible the count never would have made it to 3-2 for Sheffield to hit the home run.
Well, the more pitches a good hitter like Gary Sheffield sees, the better off he's going to be. Cordova ran the count full. He battled back to get the count to 3-2, but was not able to put him away.
2-2 pitch. All you folks in Texas and New York's viewing areas who joined us late, you might notice a different look to the Dodgers tonight. They've got the pants pulled up. That's their answer to the rally caps. They're trying to turn their luck around here. They feel they've hit rock bottom with Kevin Brown shelled last night. There's a fastball up for the strikeout. But in the bottom of the third, after Young and Vizcaíno both singled, Gary Sheffield got a breaking ball over the heart of the plate, and he punished it out of here. His 14th home run ties the game at 3. ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball, top of the 4th inning, a brand new ball game here at Dodger Stadium. Jose Guillen, Abraham Nunez, and then Francisco Cordova against Carlos Perez. Well, Perez gets help from Gary Sheffield's homer right after he had sort of straightened out his act. He's now retired 4 of the last 5 Pirates. He got a scoreless third. His teammates turn around and tie the ball game for him. And Rick, you and I were talking about this before the game. Something that's very important for starting pitchers, to be able to forget the bad inning and go right back at it. You kind of compared it to a 9-chapter or a 9-act play as far as the pitcher's approach to a ball game.
And I'm sure that's what Pete Vukovich is going to pass on to Francisco Cordova. You got to turn the page on that 3rd chapter when you gave up 3 runs in the 3rd inning. This is a 9-chapter novel. We've all read books if we didn't like one chapter more than the other. You didn't like the bottom of the 3rd. Forget about it. Your job now, go out there. Our club will get you some more runs. That's what has made that man such a terrific pitching coach.
1 ball and 2 strikes. Cordova watching. He'll bat 3rd in this inning. And a changeup in the dirt swung on and missed by Guillen. They'll throw him out at 1st. That is strikeout number 1 for Carlos Perez, who suddenly looks pretty good. Our coverage of the 50th College World Series continues tomorrow. Doubleheader on the Deuce. Bama beat Rice today, and they take on the top seed Miami at 3:30. And then at 8:30, perennial West Coast power Stanford against Florida State. They knocked off Fullerton today, and that one's at 8:30. ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com. As the big party in Omaha continues, ESPN continues its proud association with the College Baseball World Series. Here's Abraham Nunez, who singled and scored his first time up. Top of the 4th, 3-3 ball game at Dodger Stadium. Late on that one. Abraham Nunez, young infield prospect. But at the major league level, he's been overmatched offensively. He had 192 last year in a 24-game trial and came into this game at 188. He's at 200 with his 1-for-1 tonight. Mike Benjamin in the hole if the Pirates can keep the inning going that far. Pitcher due up next.
Perez expects to stick around this ball game long, though. He's going to have more confidence in his fastball. Nunez has very little power. You put him in a 3-1 count as he is now, he'll swing a little bit harder, but you've got to challenge him with the heater.
And he throws it low and inside, ball 4. That is a bad mental mistake by the pitcher, walking a number 8 batter hitting 200 with the opposing pitcher coming up. Last time he bunted successfully and led to a run as the Dodgers botched what could have been a force play, giving the Pirates a sacrifice.
Well, everybody on the mound right now talking to Carlos Perez, but to me it's a little bit late. It should have started when the count was 1-1. You simply in that situation play catch with the catcher. The most Nunez would possibly do is hit a double. In that situation, Cordova's simply going to bunt him the third, and there'd be 2 outs. Instead, you walk him, you're just doing the Pittsburgh Pirates a huge favor.
Cordova looking to bunt again. Beltre charges in from third, and the pitch is outside, ball 1. Garros charging from first. Eric Young heading for first, and then covering second is Vizcaíno.
If Cordova were able to handle the bat a little bit better, Gene Lamont would let him pull it back with all of that movement on the infield and just hit a ground ball somewhere. But this guy's not a real good athlete when he's got wood in his hand.
He's a 111 career hitter. 4 RBIs in 4 years. But now that he's given up the lead, here's a situation where he can help himself and his club retake it. Pirates have had very timely hitting this year when they get runners with 2 outs at second or third. Ball gets away, but the runner stays. Nunez took a good look at it, but Pena pounced on it quickly. And the
Pena rubbing the baseball up, he took a good look at it because it took off as if it were a cutter. Perez just doesn't have any confidence. He's afraid to throw that fastball for a strike. He proved it with the light hitting Abraham Nunez when he walked in. I mean, there's a reason guys hit 8th and 9th, because they normally can't hit. I mean, it's in the American League. You've got to throw strikes, and you want to do it early in the count.
2-0 here. Should be a good pitch to bunt, and it's ball 3. He walks the number 8 man, and now Perez goes 3-0 on the pitcher. And Davy Johnson's having a hard time believing it right now. This is a manager that stresses fundamentals. Late in the game, he's as good a matchup maker as there is in the game. But he's suffering through a tough time right now. And that pitch is a high strike.
Davey was telling me before the ball game, though, his hands are really tied as far as matching up against anybody right now. When you've got Todd Hollandsworth on the DL, Hundley not able to play.
He walks him. 2 on, 1 out. That is just bad pitching. Now the top of the order for the Pirates. Davy Johnson really is hamstrung. With Hollandsworth on the DL. Todd Hundley relegated to backup status because he can't throw anybody out, and that's really it in terms of the Dodgers' left-handed hitting. Other than Vizcaíno and Devon White, who are switch hitters, but really don't hit for that much power. Jamie Arnold is in the bullpen for now, but reports around here have it that he will soon replace Darren Dreifert in the starting rotation. Here's Benjamin. Curveball, outside corner, strike 1. Benjamin flared one to right center to drive home Abraham Nunez 2 innings ago. Pirates led 3-0 at the time. There's Darren Dreifort, who's had a big-time struggle with his control this year. His record is 5-5. He's walked 46 in 67 innings, striking out 52. Not a good ratio. One pitch, and a curveball stays up high, 2-1. And you folks who might have been watching the NBA playoffs, San Antonio breaks on top tonight. We're at Dodger Stadium. Bob Carpenter, Rick Sutcliffe, ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball. The Pirates, after giving up a 3-run lead, trying to retake the lead. And a 2-1 pitch to Mike Benjamin with 2 runners on, low and away, ball 3. He's about to walk the bases full. And by the way, you basketball fans, complete coverage, post-game coverage of the NBA on SportsCenter after our ball game tonight. He walked Abraham Nunez after striking out Jose Guillen. The pitcher tries to sacrifice, and he won't give him anything to bunt, and he walks him. Now a 3-1 to the leadoff man. And it was a hanging breaking ball up and in. Fortunately for Perez, he got it enough inside. Benjamin couldn't hit it fair.
Davey Johnson can see right away his starting pitcher has just lost all confidence in that fastball. Not only is there not much on it, but he doesn't feel like he can throw it for a strike.
Tough enough at this level to get by with one pitch, a fastball in the 90s. When you're getting by with slow curveballs, you've got a big problem. Close, but back into second is Nunez.
That's another thing we'll look for tonight. Angel Pena loves, the starting catcher for the Dodgers tonight, loves to throw behind runners. And Manny Mota, one of the coaches of the Dodgers, said that he's terrific at it. The infielders are getting more accustomed to him.
3-2 pitch, instead another wheel to second. He's already balked once tonight. That was back in the first. Sprague and Giles were moved up.
He's done the wheel play 2 or 3 times. He's gone to first base about 15 times. He's got his pickoff moves down now.
3-2. Again to second. A higher throw. And the runner back in more than he was the first time in terms of getting there quickly. And Perez just appears to be reluctant to throw the ball toward home plate.
That might be coming from the manager, Davey Johnson, to the catcher just to get more time for Arnold in the bullpen to get ready.
3-2, runners are going, and a foul out of play to the right side. Well, Gene Lamont figures, hey, here.
The only pickoff move we've not seen yet is for the first baseman, Eric Karros, to sneak behind the runner at first. Let's see if Perez works on that one now.
3-3 game, top of the fourth. Another throw to second. I can't ever remember in years seeing 3 throws to second base on the same batter.
He should throw this pitch to home plate, though. I saw the bullpen coach down there wave his hat that the guy in the pen is ready.
3-2, runners go again. Fly ball out of play. It was another slow curveball. Jamie Arnold warming up in the Dodger bullpen. Carlos Perez may not be long for this game, despite the fact he's back even. National League hitting .374 against Perez with men on base. He doesn't like the stretch either. Started then stopped. That was odd. The runner at first, Cordova, ran all the way. The runner at second, Nunez, started running, and then he stopped with the pitch. That could have been interesting at second base.
Well, that's just part of the growing process with a young ball club. Nunez obviously had to sign to go. Cordova was told by the first base coach, you're going. And Nunez just decided he couldn't make it, and he just stopped there. Well, you can't do that. You've got to continue to run when that's the sign.
They're running again. Ball 4 upstairs. And after opening the inning by striking out Jose Guillen, who's probably the best hitter of the 4, he walks the next 3 men.
Third baseman.
And Davy Johnson's out of the dugout. And Perez might be out of the game. To the bullpen he goes. 3+ innings, 3 1/3 for Carlos Perez, and we had talked about how he pitched much better in the 3rd, giving up a leadoff hit and then holding the Pirates scoreless for the first time. He is gone after walking the bases full. Jamie Arnold coming on as the Pirates try to retake the lead. Back in Los Angeles, where the Dodger pitching woes continue to mount, and after coming out of the game, Carlos Perez pictures speak louder than words. And now the batter is hit. Ed Sprague is hit by Jamie Arnold up in the helmet, and the Pirates score a run to take the lead. 3 walks and a hit batter on the first pitch.
If Perez would have used half that energy while he was on the mound, he might still be in the ball game. Arnold coming into a difficult situation. 3 guys that are normally not going to get base hits on because of the base on balls. Now you got a guy at home plate that is just red hot. 11 home runs on the year. He took Kevin Brown deep on the second pitch of the ball game last night to the opposite field. 40 RBIs coming into the game. Arnold reaching back for a little bit extra. His arm did not catch up with his body. And fortunately for Ed Sprague, he's okay. There's not a tougher way on earth to pick up an RBI.
Now Brian Giles, who went 2 for 2 against the left-hander Perez.
Center fielder number 24.
Bases loaded, one out, a run home. Pirates
Giles.
lead 4-3. Dodger dugout splintered. And Giles takes a strike from Jamie Arnold. Arnold is scheduled to start for the Dodgers Saturday when the Phillies are here against right-hander Robert Person. 0-1 pitch. And he tipped one under his bat. 0-2 very quickly. Ryan Giles came in at 291. He's gained 7 points on that now. The Pirates a chance to bust it open here in the 4th inning. Fastball up and in, or up and away rather. 1-2. Bouncer over the mound. Could be 2. At the bag, Young. A big double play for the Dodgers. With Sprague bearing down on him, Eric Young hung in there. And Pirates settle for 1 on 3 walks and a hit batter, and they take the 1-run lead.
ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Best Buy. Now that's a great idea. By the people inspired to build vehicles for your mind and heart. Nissan, driven. And by TGI Fridays. In here, it's always Friday.
Well, not much going on in L.A. today. Phil Jackson, the new coach of the Lakers. The Dodger dugout nearly destroyed by Carlos Perez. And the bottom of the 4th rolls around with Devon White leading off. 4-3 Pirates as they try to beat the Dodgers for the 8th consecutive time, 5th consecutive time this year. Devon flied out to center first time up. It's on the corner from Francisco Cordova.
Top of the 4th, a long inning for Francisco Cordova. He was out on the base path for most of it.
And Devon White hits it out to left center. Hits it well. Freddie Garcia watching it. It's an opposite field home run. And that's 93 homers in 32 games at Dodger Stadium. And Rick, when did guys ever hit opposite field home runs here?
Well, Davey Johnson mentioned before the game, guys today are bigger and stronger. They talk about the baseball, they talk about the bats, but to me, expansion has a lot to do with it. Look, the ball's right down the middle of the plate. I mean, that's been the problem more times than not, has just been bad location on the pitcher's part.
Ball game quickly tied again. That gets Perez off the hook, and Beltre takes a strike. That's Devon White, 6th of the year, RBI number 30. Sheffield and White go deep for the Dodgers here. This ball well hit right field line. It's trouble if it's fair, and it's fouled by a couple of feet.
How about the momentum swings in this ball game? Pittsburgh goes up 3-0. L.A. ties at 3-3 in the bottom of the 3rd. Pittsburgh takes a 4-3 lead. But even though they took the lead in the top of the 4th, getting that double play with 1 out and the bases loaded, to me, that put Omo back in the Dodger dugout, and they come back out and tie it up.
Well, Gene Lamont, bad back and all, will battle Davey Johnson down to the final out here. Beltre, 0-2 pitch coming. He flied to center his first time up. There's a good breaking ball away. Got it off the end of the bat, and it's missed by Nunez. Going for second, Beltre. He's in there safely. Ball gets away. He's going to 3rd. There's a little fire in the belly of a Dodger.
Well, in the last Dodger fans more to cheer about than in the 9 innings last night. Just tremendous hustle on his part. Nunez kind of circled that ball. He made up his mind right away. I'm going to test the arm again. The ball gets away. Hey, I'll test the shortstop. He beats this throw easily.
It'll be a double for Beltre and an error on Jose Guillen on the throw. Third base, nobody out, and the Dodgers trying to take the lead for the first time. Infield way in. First pitch, it's at the knees from Cordova.
Gene Lamont rolling the dice a little bit. Pena struggling. 2:14 coming into the game. No homers, only 3 RBIs. He's got a sinker ball pitcher. He's going to bring the infield in.
That'll score the run. Out to right center, and it's over the glove of Brian Giles. Pena digging for second, and the Dodgers lead for the first time. And now they can sacrifice Pena over to third with the pitcher coming up. Pete Vukovich will visit his young hurler. RBI number 4 for Pena.
I had a conversation with Manny Mota before the game about his young catcher, and he said that it was a conversation that Manny set up between Angel Pena and Pudge Rodriguez a couple of weeks ago that has really helped the confidence of this young man. Pudge told him, your opportunity is going to come. You're talented. You can perform at this level. And he just gave him some ideas about how to handle the staff, how to turn the page from being a hitter to being a catcher. And Manny said that it really had a lot to do with the confidence of this young man. He thinks it's going to take him a long way.
Okay to do that when the guy is in the other league, huh? Right-hander Greg Hansel for the Pirates.
Also, anytime Manny Mota speaks, people listen.
Well, they should.
Yes, they should. When it comes to hitting or when it comes to anything to do with baseball, that man knows a lot about it.
So the Pirates are suddenly in trouble, down by a run. Jamie Arnold due up.
Pitcher number 52.
Working out of the bullpen mainly this year.
Arnold.
He has 2 hits in 3 at-bats. 1 RBI. We expect bunt here. Ed Sprague does at third. Arnold's the kind of guy, though, who could switch off and swing the bat. Kind of stabs at a breaking ball for strike 1. Jamie Arnold, originally a draft choice of the Braves. First 21st player overall back in '92. He was in the minor leagues for toward third. He might have seen Kevin Young charging hard out of the right side of his peripheral vision, and now he's 0-2.
Anytime you're trying to advance a runner from second to third, you want to make the third baseman field the baseball. You just simply kind of push the ball his way. If he has to come in 1 or 2 steps, your base runner should easily beat that play, and that would accomplish the goal, which is the sacrifice.
0-2, and he strikes out trying to bunt. Cordova was giving him nothing but big sweeping breaking balls there. That'll be Francisco's 3rd strikeout.
Bad fundamentals on the part of Arnold, though. Watch him right here.
Second
Goes
baseman, number
towards the
21.
baseball with the bat. Look at him stab at it right there. The key to a sacrifice bunt is just the baseball with the bat. You've already got it in the angle you wanted. Why take it back and then throw it forward again? Just simply leave it there, and if it's a strike, put the bat on the ball, and the goal is accomplished.
Second time through the lineup, a lot rockier for Cordova. In fact, 6 of the 9 batters hitting safely, and 4 of those for extra bases. The Sheffield and White homers, the Beltre and Pena doubles. Eric Young, base hit to ignite the 3-run rally last inning. Cordova misses with a breaking pitch, 2-0.
Well, the reason for the patience on the part of Gene Lamont is he knows that Cordova has got to build up his arm strength. That's been his trend all year long. He gets to about the 60 pitch mark, and he starts to tire. The only way to get through that is to leave him out there.
Ball misses, 3-0. Gene Lamont's team led 3-0 and 4-3. Dodger homers have taken care of that. Now Pena's double, the go-ahead hit for L.A. Now a 3-0 count to the leadoff man. Taking all the way, Eric Young watches strike 1.
Really got to be painful for manager Gene Lamont to watch this. Not only watching his team struggle and give away leads, but you mentioned earlier the back problems that he's had. He's sitting through a lot more of this game than he had planned.
Out of play on a fastball, 3-2.
Velocity of Francisco Cordova is just not what it's been the last couple of years. He started 2 ball games early this season. He went on a disabled list because of a lack of shoulder strength. And he told Pete Vukovich he's healthy. There's no pain. It's just not strong yet.
3-2. Out of play, right field side. Eric Young 1 for 2 tonight. He's hit the ball well twice. Unlucky first time up. He absolutely scorched one through the box right into the glove hand of Cordova. 3-2 again. Runner at second, 1 out. Breaking ball popped up short left center. Going out Benjamin. He is there with a basket catch over the shoulder. Freddie Garcia got no jump on that ball whatsoever, and Benjamin, reading it right off the bat, made an outstanding play.
Well, with the exception of young Jose Guillen in right field, there's just not a whole lot of range defensively in the outfield for the Pirates today. They went with the right-handed hitting Freddie Garcia instead of the left-handed Brent Brown. They wanted his bat in the lineup, but you're going to give up a lot defensively. A terrific play on the part of Mike Benjamin on a ball that Freddie Garcia should have caught.
And he really didn't even catch it with his glove. It popped out, and then he trapped it with his wrist against his body. Great concentration by Mike Benjamin. Vizcaino now with 2 outs, and a fastball's outside. Vizcaino had the infield hit last inning that set up the 2-on-1 out situation. Gary Sheffield's 3-run homer. He pulls one down to Kevin Young. To the pitcher, leads him perfectly, and the Dodgers settle for 2. A homer by Devon White, back-to-back doubles by Beltre and Angel Pena. And Devon hit an opposite field shot. We're in the wild, wild west tonight. Pirates have scored in 3 of the first 4 innings. Dodgers have stormed back. Happy starter tonight. Francisco Cordova not a very happy man himself. The glove in the hat against the dugout wall as opposed to the bat earlier of Carlos Perez. Has not walked a batter. A lot of pitches though through 4, Rick Sutcliffe.
Yes, and his velocity continues to drop. And he also knows that when he goes back out for the bottom of the 5th, he's got Sheffield, Mondesi, and Karros waiting on him.
Kevin Young, Jason Kendall, Freddie Garcia for the Pirates in the top of the 5th. This Pittsburgh ball club only 5 games, 4.5 now, back of the Astros after Houston was beaten by Greg Maddux tonight in the National League Central. Fastball on the corner, 1 ball, 1 strike. Pirates are 11-14 against their fellow Central Division clubs. Ironically, they have a good record against everybody except last place Milwaukee. They're 0-3 against the Brewers, 3-0 against the Cubs, 2 of 3 against the Reds. They've played with Houston, splitting 6, and they've played with the Cardinals, splitting the 6 games with St. Louis. 3 balls, 1 strike. Heavy sinker. This brings back memories of what the Pirates did 2 years ago. And they went 79-83 with the Young Ball Club in Gene Lamont's first year and finished second to the Astros in the NL Central. Ball 4 gets away, and Kevin Young down to first base. That's 4 walks by the Dodgers and a hit batter
Catcher number 88.
in less than 2 innings now.
3-1 off-speed pitch, a 3-2 changeup from Jamie Arnold. What happened to the fastball in baseball? They hit the breaking ball out. Ask Francisco Cordova. Gary Sheffield proved that. You've got to establish the fastball first, and thus far tonight, nobody's done that.
And Rick, I've talked about a lot of different analysts and ex-players about this lately. There are a lot of guys around baseball with slider bat speed. So if you've got a good fastball, you can get the ball by those guys. Sometimes when you throw a breaking ball 0-2 or 1-2, you're doing them a heck of a favor. Jason Kendall 0 for 1 with a sacrifice fly that was actually caught by the first baseman Eric Karros. That'll even the count. 1 ball, 1 strike. Kendall was hitting .261 at the end of April. And then he really geared it up. 59 for his next 152. That's a .388 clip in 41 games. That got his average up to tonight's .348. Only one of his first 3 years did he hit under 300. 2-1 count and a throw over. And for Kendall, that was in 1997. He hit 300 his rookie year, 294 in 97, and the reason for that was an 0 for 24 he took in June of that year. Then he bounced back with 327 last year. He can flat out hit. And we've got several sons of major league players in the ball game tonight, at least in uniform. Kendall, the only man on the Pirates roster to have played in an All-Star game. He's been there twice. Leadoff man aboard here in the top of the 5th inning. Little pop-up. Pitcher might catch this one. On the mound, he makes the play. Didn't hang up there very long, so Jamie Arnold said, "I've got it."
I guess the way the Dodgers defense has been performing as of late, Jamie said, "I'll take my own chances with this." One thing I never really understood, they always tell the pitcher to get out of the way. You know, you're the sheriff out there, let somebody else catch that ball.
How about this? The Pirates got a run last inning without getting a hit. The RBI came on a hit batter. It's been rather bizarre. Their last hit was Brian Giles leading off the third with a fluke single. Blown away ball one.
How about the way young Angel Pena just smothered that breaking ball, though, keeping it in front of him, keeping the runner from getting into scoring position, and really acting like it was no big deal. That'll remind you a little bit of Pudge Rodriguez.
1 ball, no strikes. Fastball rides inside.
Even with all the terrific offensive numbers Jason Kendall has put up, he's told me many times, I'm part of the pitching staff first, part of the lineup second. My goal is to get the starter as deep into the ball game as I can. He's got his work cut out for him today with Francisco Cordova.
2-0 pitch, and another little jam job. We got some weird pop flies flying around the infield, and Karros backtracks to make that play. Freddie Garcia's hit the ball in the air 3 times, and he's 0 for 3. Next up, Jose Guillen. There have been rumors about Guillen that the Pirates may be shopping him around some. Rick questioned his attitude as far as spring training earlier. They did send him down for 3 weeks. Going to be a big-time player, Chad Hermanson. And he's a center fielder, which could push Brian Giles to right field, which could push Jose Guillen out of a job next year. They've got Al Martin locked up for a couple of years on a long-term contract, so he will be the left fielder for a while. Base hit Guillen, nice job of going the other way, and Kevin Young stops at second base with 2 down. Lloyd McClendon will like that.
He's tried to tell the youngster that you've got to go to the opposite field with all of the off-speed pitches and fastballs away that you're seeing. Once you start doing that, they'll start challenging you on the inner half of the plate, and then you can hit those home runs that you're so proud of.
Here's Abraham Nunez, who has scored 2 runs, and that's your number 8 hitter. A single in the second, enabling Cordova to sacrifice, and then a very costly walk by Perez in the 4th, the first of 3 in a row. That was Rick Rennick on the phone. And that fastball is in there, 0-2. little chopper down the first base side. It hits the runner. Batter gets a base hit on that, and the putout goes to the nearest infielder. It's a 5-4 Dodger lead. Gary Sheffield coming up. His 3-run bomb back in the third tied it for the Dodgers.
Tony Womack here. And the bases were loaded. Everybody comes in to score. Arizona beginning play 8.5 games in front of LA, and right now they lead the Marlins 9-3.
You got it, Bill Pito. Arizona 13 games over 500, trying to win their 4th game in a row. Pirates have a couple of defensive changes here. We'll update you on the Buck defense shortly. But we don't want to miss the first pitch to Gary Sheffield. The last one to him landed in the left field bleachers. Low and away, ball 1. Gary tonight 2 for 2, a single, a 3-run homer. He's now hitting .304 with 14 bombs and 41 batted in. Cordova misses with a sinker. Al Martin is in the game to play left field, and that pushes Freddie Garcia into third base. And I just wonder if maybe Ed Sprague is feeling something after getting hit in the head by that pitch a couple of innings ago, Rick.
Hopefully it's nothing serious. Possibly, I'm sure there's some soreness in there. He's going to have a headache for a while.
Fastball in there, 2-1. So Al Martin will bat second in the Pirate lineup. Sheffield fouls one straight back.
Even though Francisco Cordova does not have the velocity that he's used to, you've still got to use the fastball and change speeds with it. There on that 2-1 pitch, he just simply took a little bit off and had Sheffield way out in front. Now put a little bit on, and he'll sit down. You got to put it in the strike zone, though. He had him set up for it, but he's just overthrowing right now.
Well, Spurs break on top tonight over the Knicks, 89-77. Complete post-game NBA coverage on SportsCenter after we wrap up our baseball doubleheader tonight. More on the U.S. Open down there at rainy Pinehurst. And he misses to Sheffield and walks him leading off the 5th. That's Cordova's first walk of the game. Here's what happened to Ed Sprague with the bases loaded back in the 4th inning. Right on top of the helmet, you could hear a loud crack.
So important the way Ed Sprague reacted to that. For all the youngsters out there watching, when you see something coming up and in, don't turn away from it. Turn towards the catcher so that ear flap can protect you, as Ed Sprague did there.
Here's Raul Mondesi, 0 for 2. Fastball tails inside. Strike out in the first for Mondesi. A pop up to short in the 3rd. His next homer will be number 20. And if he hits one here, he'll be up to 50 runs batted in.
a big stride there, more times than not, towards the third baseman. And that's the reason he averaged over 100 strikeouts per year the last 4 years. There's really no reason for that either. He's as strong, maybe stronger than Sheffield, but it's almost like he thinks he needs that stride to hit it out of the park. It says 360 in the gap there in center field, not 460.
2 balls and no strikes. It's a breaking ball that misses, ball 3. Mark McGwire did not homer in St. Louis tonight, so Mondesi and Big Mac tied with 19. Sammy did not go deep for the Cubs. He still sits on 22. Jose Canseco did hit 26 for Tampa Bay today. 3-0 pitch, instead over to first. Dodgers on top, 5-4, bottom of the 5th. 3-0 pitch, and Raul was hacking away on a pitch that was outside the strike zone.
Just gets a little bit long every now and then, a little bit over aggressive. You can't argue with the numbers that he's put up, but look at the stride right there. And when you take a stride that length, your eyes are going to start to go up and down. The baseball's going to move, and it's just tougher to make good contact.
Runner was leaning a bit, Sheffield back. The other National League home run leader, Jeff Bagwell, did hot homer tonight as Atlanta beat Houston 3-1. So it's still Bagwell and Sosa with 22, Jay Bell with 20, Mondesi and McGwire with 19. 3-1, runner going. Outside, ball 4, and a pair of leadoff walks now by Cordova here in the bottom of the 5th inning. Rick Rennick's going to come out. Now, normally Gene Lamont would. He just can't get off the bench and move around because of his back. So that's going to do it for Cordova. Pirates are going to make a double. Journeyman right-hander Greg Hansel. Dodgers pair of walks, trying to take a bigger lead in the 5th inning. 4+ innings for Francisco Cordova. He picked a bad time for his first 2 walks, leading off Sheffield and Mondesi here in the 5th inning. 8 hits, couple of walks, 3 strikeouts, 2 homers. He's responsible for up to 7 runs because of the 2 men on base. Double switch. Warren Morris will come in and play second base. For the Pirates, the former LSU World Series hero. He'll bat 9th. Pitcher batting in the number 8 spot. And Greg Hansel, 28-year-old right-hander, into the game.
Gene Lamont able to get a lot of his left-handed hitters back into the ball game because he knows that Davy Johnson's just got 1 left-hander available in the bullpen. Masaoka throwing 3 innings last night. He cannot come back tonight, so it's just Pedro Borbon that's left.
Hansel misses again, 2-0.
Gene Lamont figures he'll get at least 1 at-bat off a right-handed pitcher for those hitters. And if it gets to the latter part of the game, the Dodgers have the lead. It's going to be Jeff Shaw, another right-hander.
Hansel, a former Dodger who pitched here for 20 games in '95. He's been with 9 or 10 different organizations, and he's been with a couple of them twice.
It's hard to keep up with all the places this young man has been. He's always been a hard thrower, but just location and coming up with a second pitch to use at the big league level, it's been tough for him to do.
2-1 to Karros.
Kevin Brown on the mound last night for the Dodgers. They thought it was an off night for the bullpen. Just the opposite. 4 guys had to pitch out of the pen last night for L.A. None for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
2-1. It's on the corner. That evens the count. Pirates would love a double play ball right here. Dodgers, a power-hitting right-handed team, as Rick said. I was talking to Jeff Shaw before the game, and he said every time we look up and we have a chance to rally, we hit into a double play. And those right-handed batters aren't going to beat out ground balls. 2-2. There's a chopper outside, third foul.
Davey Johnson just really does not have the opportunity to manage much. He was talking to me before the game about Whitey Herzog, and how much respect he had for Whitey and how he set up his bullpen and his bench. Right now, Davey just does not have those pieces working for him.
2-2 pitch. Throws it away, and the runners will move up. Hansel overthrew the fastball, and Jason Kendall had no chance. Mondesi to second, nobody out.
Those situations where you watch a guy throw in the bullpen and he's just electric. Fastball in the low to mid-90s, good movement, good breaking ball. But when you throw in 30,000 people and a national TV audience, that's when things like that happen.
Now he's gone to 3-2 on Karras.
I remember my rookie year right here at Dodger Stadium, the pitching coach, Red Adams, coming to the mound saying, son, you're forgetting to do one thing. You need to breathe. Sometimes you get so excited, you forget to do that.
3-2 to Karras. Second and third, nobody out. Infield back except for the first baseman. And he jams him and gets a little pop-up. And that shallow first baseman, Kevin Young, makes the play. That's a big first out. Now let's check in again with Bill Pito.
All right, Bob, as you mentioned earlier, Atlanta victorious. So Philadelphia 5.5 games behind the Braves as we speak. Jim Leyritz to right, Bobby Abreu. Oh, what a catch out there in right field. It's 4-1 Phillies in the seventh.
And the Phillies in the East, 5.5 back of Atlanta after the Braves won their ball game tonight. But they're hanging tough.
That's a good ball club right there. Manager Terry Francona of the Phillies has got that team playing hard. And it was a basketball player that told the Phillies front office that he would be a good manager. Remember Michael Jordan making that phone call to recommend Terry Francona?
Yep. Michael would play for Terry in Birmingham in the White Sox organization. Swing and a miss.
Michael's got a couple of options, I'm sure, tonight. He could come back and play basketball for the Lakers with Phil Jackson, or he could always call his buddy Terry Francona for a job.
Gene Lamont was managing the White Sox at the time, and in '93 he won the AL West title, Chicago's first American League title in 10 years. Now, Phil Jackson said today, I'd love to have some of those ex-Bulls back, but they're all under contract. He said Rodman's in another ozone somewhere. We'll see if we can find him. No balls and 2 strikes.
So he sent out a search party, huh? He's looking for it. He might be here tonight.
Pretty good hack by Devon White on a fastball up. Devo 1 for 2 with a solo home run. An opposite field shot back in the 4th. It immediately got the Dodgers back even at 4. After a Beltre double, Pena drove him home. There's a fly ball lifted short center. Here comes Giles. He's got it. Runner tagging and coming, and the throw is in time. Collision, and Kendall holds on. It's a double play, and the inning is over. Gary Sheffield slamming into Jason Kendall on an outstanding one-hopper from Brian Giles. It'll go 8-2 on the double play, and the Dodgers are held off the board as Jason Kendall holds his ground. top of the had just about everything tonight. Hit batters, bases walked full, and Jason Kendall trying to shake off a big-time collision with Gary Sheffield. You can see Sheffield's uniform all dirtied up now. Two of them had quite a collision a couple of years ago that ended up in a little rough stuff. Warren Morris leads off, batting ninth after the Pirates made the double switch. What a job by Greg Hansel. Pop up, fly ball double play. And a bouncer out to second. Eric Young, instead of getting behind the ball, stopped and backhanded it, and that should be his 6th error of the year. A little matador defense out at second base.
And absolutely no reason for it, Bob. You're exactly right. Plenty of time. This ball bounced 5 times. Get your body in front of it. If it takes that bad hop, it hits you in the chest, it drops in front of you, and you still record the out.
That's bad baseball right there.
That's just a lack of effort, too. You're exactly right.
Dodgers make their 58th error. They're in the bottom 4 in the league in defense. And a bunt miss by Mike Benjamin. We have not had an artistic bunting ball game here tonight. Things are tough enough on pitchers right now. Infielders not getting behind ground balls can make it even worse. Runner goes. Swing and a tapper in front of the home plate area. Pena pounces, and it's as good as a sacrifice for the Pirates as Warren Morris goes down to second base.
Left fielder.
third baseman.
Can't help but flash back. I look at all the errors on the infield for the Dodgers the last couple of nights and think about Say, Russell, Lope, and Garvey, and all the years they spent together here in L.A.
Al Martin, a 285 batter. And here's a veteran who was given a long-term contract by the Pirates a couple of years ago. He signed through next year with club options for 2001 and 2. They tried to trade him to Arizona. That deal fell through. Al Martin's still a very serviceable player, despite hitting .239 last year. He has a career mark of .280. He can run. He's actually led off a bunch of times for the Pirates this year. And he has scored a run almost one per game as a leadoff man. Scored a run here in the first inning last night.
Martin, another one of those guys that in October had that laser eye surgery. Said that it's helped him a lot. Said it's almost like somebody turned the lights on for him. Now, what else are they going to do to help hitters? You know, the new baseball, new bats, they don't move fences back, they move them in. They're trying to get pitchers to throw the high stripe, and now they got laser eyes.
Fly ball right field. It backs up Mondesi, and on the track, he takes it. Back to second to tag is Warren Morris, and he should be on third base after that fly ball. He was very tardy in getting back on that play. I mean, he can score from second base on a two-out single, but Rick, you can score a lot more ways from third base. I mean, it was obvious that ball was going to be caught.
You can see the third base coach, Jack Lynn, with his hands on his hip, just in disgust over that. No reason.
And then you've got to know, Mondesi has one of the great arms in baseball, so if you're not back there quickly, you can't go to third. Runner at second, 2 down. Giles the batter. Ironically, Brian Giles tonight, twice against the left-hander, got base hits. Against the right-hander, Jamie Arnold, he bounced into a 4-3 double play that ended that fourth inning bases loaded threat. Two and 0. Fastball runs back across the inside corner.
We talked about no reason to try to steal third base in this situation and take that chance, but for you to hustle to get the third with 2 outs puts a lot of pressure on one person, and that's the catcher behind home plate. He cannot let the ball get away from him or that run would score.
2-1 pitch. Line drive right field, but see, now they can't score the runner. Mondesi throws home, and he is saved as he beat the throw. Mondesi, you would figure 9 times out of 10 would throw out a man at home plate on that one. So the Pirates do cash the run, even though Morris was not at third base where he should have been. Mondesi looked like a sure bet to throw him out at the plate.
Well, if he's at third base, there's not even a play at home plate. But Mondesi right there, look at the extra step that he took. That one step gave Warren Morris the opportunity just to get ahead of that throw right there. Look at him right here. Now he gets set. That's too long.
You know, and that's a good call by the home plate umpire, Jerry Meals. A lot of umpires will call you out if the ball beats you, no matter what. But you saw Pena was actually on the foul side of home plate to get that throw. Giles with his third hit, his second RBI, and the Pirates have tied the game. They took second on the throw to boot.
I can't help but go back to how this inning started off with Eric Young just simply not getting in front of that ground ball. Brian Giles would have never hit in this inning, would have no RBIs to show for in that inning.
That is an unearned run because of that error.
And you wouldn't have the cleanup hitter at home plate right now.
Kevin Young hit by a pitch, a foul out, and a walk. RBI sitting out there, a go-ahead run, and that one almost hit him.
got to go back to the Dodger defense. The sacrifice fly to the first baseman in the first inning. And look at Young getting pushed off home plate there. The sacrifice bunt in the second inning, misplayed by Eric Karros.
That's 3 runs, Rick. Out to short. Backing up is Vizcaíno, and he throws out Kevin Young. Pirates pick up an unearned run on an error and a 2-out single by Brian Giles. Halfway through the 6th, we're back even at 5. ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball, Dodger Stadium, LA. And again, we see a little bit of everything in this ball game tonight. Plays at the plate. Double play earlier. And against Greg Hansel, who did a good job of stopping the Dodgers last inning. Jason Kendall will set up as Adrian Beltre steps in.
I just wonder what that little conversation was there at the mound between Jason Kendall and Greg Hansel. You know that the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to protect their catcher. He just had a heck of a collision at home plate. Something might be in order. He might have gone out there and just said, hey, let's win this ball game first. Don't worry about me.
If I'm the Pirates, the last thing I want to do is wake up the Dodgers the way LA's going.
And there was nothing wrong with the way Sheffield went about that. That's just good, clean, hard baseball.
Breaking ball, hit foul, 1 ball, 2 strikes.
But if there is such thing as an MVP year in, year out for the Pittsburgh Pirates, it's that guy behind home plate. Last year he led all major league catchers with 149 games caught. Just 144 the year before that. Quite a leader they've got behind home plate in Pittsburgh.
Last year, when Sheffield and Kendall collided, it resulted in a brawl, suspensions after that incident. But tonight, Rick, good, clean, hard baseball.
You got to respect both of them. Sheffield sacrificing his body, trying to bust the ball loose, and Kendall staying right there taking the blow.
1-2 pitch and a foul off to the right side. Last 3 hitters for the Dodgers in this inning. Beltre, Pena, then the pitcher's spot. One and 2 to Beltre, 1 for 2 with a double. Fly ball center field. Ryan Giles cruising back. He's about 385 from home plate, making the catch. And 4 outs now in a row registered by Hansel. Lower left of your screen, that is Jamie Arnold just stepping to the on-deck circle for the Dodgers. He's already pitched the better part of 3 innings. He is scheduled to start against the Phillies Saturday here. Chopper up the middle, to his left, Benjamin guns out Pena, who is swinging on the first pitch, and now Arnold will be called back. Alan Mills throwing in the bullpen.
A little routine play right there you saw from shortstop Mike Benjamin was something that was missing for the Pittsburgh Pirates last year. Reason they went out and they signed Pat Mears, they signed Benjamin. Last year in the box score after a Pirate game, 45 times the letter E and the number 6 went up. Errors by their shortstop. They knew they had to solve that problem to help their young pitching staff.
A familiar face stepping in for the Dodgers, Craig Counsell. They just picked him up from Florida for a player to be named later. Chance Sanford, a young infielder, was sent back to AAA when this veteran left-handed batter was added to the roster. We saw him on Memorial Day with the Marlins, and he was just having a nightmare hitting. For the Marlins, he hit 159, 11 for 69. Florida had pretty much replaced Counsell with their young second baseman Luis Castillo. pretty good up-the-middle combination with Alex Gonzalez.
Well, that's a surefire sign of a guy that's not swinging the bat very well when you got that big shin guard as counsel. Guys do that when they're just too much full conscience. They're over-aggressive. They're rolling over on top of everything. And when you do that, a lot of times you hit the ball right into your right leg.
And Rick, you can really tell he's going bad when he wears it for batting practice. Squirts one, base hit, left side, right past the dive of Freddie Garcia. So Craig Counsell as a Dodger now, 2 for 4. Maybe a change of scenery is all he needs.
Well, and a change of location on where you try to hit the baseball, and that's what he did right there. That fastball's in on his hands, but he's not trying to pull it. He simply stays with it. Inside out's the baseball. You got Garcia in at third base, respecting the bunt, and a nice gap to aim for.
Lead run aboard now with 2 outs, bottom of the 6th. Top of the order, Eric Young. Eric Young arguably could be 3 for 3 tonight instead of 1 out of 3. Hot shot back to the pitcher, caught by Cordova in the first. After his 3rd inning single, a flare to left center. He was robbed of a hit by Mike Benjamin, who made a Willie Mays type over-the-shoulder basket catch out in left center. Breaking ball catches the corner. 1 ball, 1 strike. Hansel, originally taken by Boston in the draft back in '89. Mets had him. Dodgers had him. Right-hander Brad Clance, left-hander Jeff Wallace for the Pirates. The Twins had him. Boston released. Milwaukee released. Arizona released. Oakland, Kansas City, Giants. And the Pirates got him as a free agent this past April 7th. Lots to talk about on SportsCenter later tonight on ESPN. NBA Finals. San Antonio wins Game 1 tonight. U.S. Open tomorrow. Up the middle. Base hit, center field. Counsell makes the turn and stops at second base. Dodgers looking for a 2-out rally now as Jose Vizcaino will step in.
Shortstop number 5.
Eric Young once again hitting the ball solid. I have always liked the way Craig Counsell plays the game of baseball, though. Right there, just a simple little hustle around the bag at second base. Puts pressure on that center fielder. He's got to charge it and come up with it ready to throw. Every now and then, one of those balls will get away from him. But if Counsell just jogs into second, there's no pressure on the center fielder. There's no play, no possibility of an error.
Jose Vizcaino, 1 for 3. Lead run at second base now. 2 outs, bottom of the 6th. Fastball on the corner. Good thing for the Dodgers, Vizcaino was ready to come back when he did. Because Mark Grudzielanek broke a bone in his hand, punching the dugout wall in Pittsburgh. And a fly ball handled by Jose Guillen. 2 left by the Dodgers. They have stranded 6 base runners tonight. It'll be Kendall, Garcia, and Guillen coming up for the Pirates in the 7th inning.
Live in your world, play in ours.
ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball, Dodger Stadium, L.A. On to the 7th inning in a 5-5 game. Alan Mills, longtime American leaguer with the Yankees and the Orioles, takes over. Davey Johnson knows him well. Hard thrower, envisioned as a good setup man for Jeff Shaw here in L.A.
Always been a gamer, terrific teammate with the Baltimore Orioles. Cal Ripken Jr. with a lot of respect for Alan Mills. Comes over here, a multi-year deal, and he's kind of solidified that setup role. Normally Mills would pitch in the 8th inning. He's in a little bit sooner here in the top of the 7th tonight.
Jason Kendall, Freddie Garcia, and Jose Guillen for the Bucks in the top of the 7th. Going to turn up the octane a little bit here with Alan Mills on the mound. Pretty good 2 2/3 by Jamie Arnold. An unearned run, 3 hits, 1 walk. Fastball on the corner, says Jerry Meals. 0-2. Good to see Ed Sprague in the dugout after taking that fastball on the helmet earlier tonight. And taken out of the game.
That is a good sign to see Sprague there. He was hit back in the top of the 4th inning. He did not come to home plate again. Probably just maybe a headache, possibly a little dizziness. Vision maybe a little bit blurred. Hopefully he'll be back in the lineup tomorrow.
There's a breaking ball and a strikeout in the dirt as Kendall fans. Rick, earlier you alluded to the Dodger defense's mistakes tonight, resulting in 3 Pittsburgh runs.
Yeah,
Take
really
us through it.
mental mistakes right here. Watch Eric Karros when he catches the ball. Don't look at third base. Throw it in. If he throws it in when he catches the ball, that throw would have beat Brian Giles to home plate. Once again, here's the sacrifice bunt. Don't try to barehand that. That's why you get a glove. Neither one of those plays where errors charged. Now, this is a simple error right here. Look at that. Eric Young did not get his body in front of it. He tried to play it off to the side, and that's really the only unearned run of the bunch. Yet 3 earned runs cost or added to the Dodgers pitching staff.
Freddie Garcia 0 for 3. Dodgers with a very un-LA-like 4.53 earned run average. I mean, normally they're in the top 3 in the league with Atlanta and whoever else happens to be there at the time.
Really, and the hidden problem with all of that is the lack of range that the Dodgers have defensively. They just don't get to the baseballs that most good teams get to.
Alan Mills has a nasty breaking ball going with his fastball right now. Struck out Kendall on 1. That was a dandy to Freddie Garcia.
I'm not trying to make any excuses for the Dodgers pitching because they've been bad as well. Maybe even overrated, possibly not as good as everybody thought they were going to be. But they're not getting a lot of help.
Up the middle. Right over Alan Mills, number 75. And Freddie Garcia gets his first base hit in 4 trips. Next up will be Jose Guillen.
Garcia's going to take a hat. I take a look at this, and it makes me glad that I'm back up here in the broadcast booth.
Hey, Rick, do you hear those go by?
Oh, my goodness. That's one of those where it's all over with. You start checking your body for holes. Like there's got to be a leak somewhere.
That was a missile going by. And here's Guillen, who went the other way and got a base hit his last time. It's on the corner. Outside part of the plate, down low, strike 1. Pitcher spot due up next for the Pirates. Now quickly 0-2. Ismael Valdez, Kevin Brown. Brownie's expression looks like he's working this game tonight. He's not going to be a happy man for the next 3 or 4 days to be around until he can get back out there. Here's the 0-2. Fastball away, and Pena fakes a snap down the first.
Not only did he have a conversation with Pudge Rodriguez, but that's a lot like the Texas Ranger catcher right there, trying to throw behind a runner. He's so good at it. Pena working on that footwork in a conversation with Pudge Rodriguez. Certainly got the arm strength to do that. And Manny Mota said the main thing Rodriguez told Pena was, don't be afraid, you know. Take charge of the ball game out there. You're the one that's putting down the signs. You control what happens.
Rick, is that the toughest thing for a young catcher to do, is to be that assertive when you're out there working with veteran guys?
Yes, and it's so hard to get veteran pitchers to believe in you. It takes time.
1-2 pitch. Instead, over to first.
This was one thing that we did in Chicago when we had Joe Girardi and Damon Berryhill, some young catchers there when they first came to the big league. When a man would get on second, you'd have to use a sequence of signs because he'd be peeking in. As pitchers, we would actually give the catchers the sign. Take some of the pressure off of them from time to time.
A chopper down third. That's trouble. Beltre charges, throws, and no chance. Jose Guillen with a base hit, and the Pirates have 2 on, 1 out here in the top of the 7th inning. Well, it's been raining down at Pinehurst, and it's going to make the toughest test in tournament golf a little tougher. The 99th U.S. Open from Pinehurst number 2. Defending champion Lee Janzen and the world's biggest names: Tiger, Duval, Nicklaus, Irwin, O'Meara, Els, Singh, plus a field of 156. 18-hole, 2-part coverage on ESPN Thursday and Friday, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern, and again at 5 p.m. Eastern from one of the great golf courses on the planet, Pinehurst number 2. Davey Johnson makes the pitching change. Pedro Borbon coming into the ball game. Left-hander Brant Brown was in the on-deck circle. We'll see if we go lefty-lefty here in a minute. ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball continues from Los Angeles. Top of the 7th inning. Pirates mounting a rally here. And as Rick Sutcliffe mentioned a little while ago, the only left-hander available out of the bullpen tonight, Pedro Borbon. He will face a left-hander in Brant Brown, who bats for the Pittsburgh pitcher Greg Hansel. And he's a lefty who will sling that breaking ball in there.
One of the few times Davey Johnson can actually manage a little bit and get the matchup that he prefers. Borbon just extremely difficult on any left-handed hitter.
Brant Brown had a 5-hit game last Wednesday, tying his career high with 5 runs batted in. Two of his 3 home runs this year have been rather unique. He had an inside-the-park job at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, and he hit one over the right field roof at Tiger Stadium. And he's another one of Lloyd McClendon's projects. Doing a good job of staying on the ball, hitting lefties at that .333 clip. Here's the one in Detroit. I think he got all of it, partner.
Oh, my goodness.
That was out on to Trumbull. 1 ball and 2 strikes to Brant. And he gets fisted, fouls one right back here.
One of the things that Lloyd McClendon is trying to do with Brant Brown is to cut down on that swing. You don't have to hit every ball out of the ballpark. Find a gap, just get it over the fence, and make better contact, more consistent with your line drive.
That one is close, but ball 2. the strikeout. Tough enough to hang in there, but when Pedro Borbon drops down that far, it is really tough.
I would imagine the one thing Lloyd McClendon would tell Brent Brown when he gets back to the dugout is, hey, every now and then you just got to tip your hat to the opposition. That's so tough to stay in there. That breaking ball starts out behind your back. If you guess wrong and it's a heater, it's going to hit you in the middle of the back. And Brent Brown just a little out in front of that sweeping curveball.
Now here's Warren Morris with 2 outs. Big run sitting out there on second base for the Pirates. Freddie Garcia, Jose Guillen, 90 feet behind him. In a 5-5 ball game, top of the 7th. Big curveball, and he had to chalk that one up. It hit right off the end of the cue. Warren Morris reaching on that damaging Eric Young error. His first time up. A name that will live in infamy as long as they play the College World Series up in Omaha.
Which
the
they are right now.
series-winning home run for LSU and Skip Bertman 3 years ago.
Kind of reminds me of a former Pittsburgh Pirates second baseman named Bill Mazeroski.
1960, over the wall at wonderful Forbes Field, huh?
I was actually told that Bill Mazeroski put his stamp of approval on young Warren Morris. If he's going to recommend you, that's a pretty good guy to do it.
Yankee fans will forever remember the image of Yogi Berra trying to climb the left field wall. He was playing left field that day. 3 balls and a strike, and a step off by Borbon. Until Joe Carter homered a few years ago to beat Philadelphia, that was the most recent World Series winning home run, where the series actually ended on that one swing. Fastball hit out to left field. Sheffield is there. And the Pirates get a couple of hits. Now they've stranded 10 base runners. Sheffield, Mondesi, and Karros coming up for L.A. Welcome back to L.A. ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball. The former Brave and the former Met. Keith Osick handling the former Brave and Met. Brad Klontz, who comes in as the 3rd Pittsburgh pitcher of the night. And it's interesting because Jason Kendall out of the ball game and Keith Osick taking over. You wonder if Kendall is still feeling the effects of that home plate collision with Gary Sheffield. Up the middle, Klontz got a leg on it. It lays right down for him, and he throws out Sheffield. Earlier today, we talked to Davey Johnson about the 3 big guys in the middle of his lineup. They're coming up in a good situation right here.
You know, when you're one-dimensional, basically we've been a right-handed hitting ball club. We don't have any matchups in our favor a lot of times with runners in scoring position. And really, I haven't had the bench strength to replace Mondesi or Karros or Sheffield. So they've been having to, you know, be out there all the time. And it's just tough, makes it tougher.
Davey Johnson checking his lineup card.
Not a whole lot he can do right there. He's probably looking to see if there's anybody else that can pitch for him tonight. He's gone through a lot of relievers the last couple of days.
Yeah, 4 tonight, including the starter, Perez. Klontz has thrown a couple of warm-up tosses and appears to be okay to stay in. He better be okay. He's got Mondesi and Karros to deal with now. Tie game, bottom of the 5th. Bottom of the 7th inning, tied at 5.
This is exactly what Davey Johnson was talking about, though. If he could throw a Todd Hollingsworth, a Hundley in the middle of these 3 right-handers, then you make the opposing manager manage a little bit. But it's simple. You got 3 right-handers in a row. You you need to get him out, you bring in a submarine right-handed pitcher to get one look at him. Awful difficult to hit.
Ground ball on a breaking ball, down to third. Garcia scoops, offline save. He pulled Kevin Young off the bag. And Freddie Garcia has just committed his first error of the year.
Probably didn't take a whole lot of ground balls during batting practice this afternoon. He probably spent most of his time in left field where he started the ball game. A simple little throw. Kevin Young, a big first baseman, terrific wingspan, doing all he can do, but it wasn't enough.
Kevin Young at 6'3", unable to find the bag in time. Here's Eric Karros. It's going to be tough for Eric Karros to lift that ball in the air. Wants those sinking fastballs sidearm like that. He might be pounding it into the ground. Pirates looking for a double play ball. They've turned 79 this year. Mondesi always a running threat. He has stolen 13 bases this year. And Raul, in his career, has stolen 117 bases. Good combination of power and speed. Look at that fastball. Right under Eric's hands on the inside corner.
Just so tough to hit off a guy like this when you only get one look at him, one at bat. Look at him painting the inside corner with those first two strikes. Karros knows that Ponce's best pitch is his slider. You got to protect against that. And now he's dug himself in a deep hole.
Says home plate umpire Jerry Meal. Two great fastballs and then a nasty breaking pitch off the plate. 2 down.
Center fielder number 22.
When you got a guy that throws from down here, it takes a long time for that arm to get out front. As a base stealer, it gives you an opportunity to get a little bit better break. I think this is the setup Raul Mondesi wanted right here with the left-handed hitter, Devon White, in the box. It kind of blocks the view of the catcher when you take those first couple of steps.
He's running. And a pitch is not able to make a throw as Osick got a low pitch and really couldn't make a play at all. Mondesi with his 14th of the year. Well, the Phillies continue to play well. It's starting pitching tonight. They knock off the Padres. And the Phillies stay 5 back of Atlanta, who won at Houston. Now they're going to walk to Devon White and pitch to the right-hander Beltran.
Even though Devon White only hitting .266 coming into the ball game, Beltran hitting over 300. It's the old school thinking right here of righty versus righty, as opposed to the right-hander versus the left-hander that you see there.
Well, we saw how difficult Rick Plants was a moment ago for Eric Karros. So now with force out at any base, 2 outs, runners at first and second.
Third baseman number 29.
And Adrian Beltre, 1 for 3 with a double, steps in.
Beltre.
We'll see if he follows the same pattern he did against Karros.
Karros really a more disciplined hitter than Beltre. Beltre a free swinger. He might start out with that breaking ball.
Good call. It's right down the middle.
Huge advantage for Ponce right here with Beltre having never faced him before. You'd like to take a look at a couple of pitches. You just hope they're not strikes.
You know, he should have thrown that ball because I never saw Jerry Meals give time. His hands didn't appear to come up. And if he would have gone ahead and lobbed it, well, there it is right there. It was very late when Meals gave it. And I know a lot of people say the umpires are giving the hitters way too much leeway, giving them time out that late. There's a line drive to right field. Rushing in, Guillen. Ball drops in. Dodgers take the lead 6-5 here in the 7th inning. And both of Beltre's hits tonight have been to the opposite field. And that'll be an unearned run after the error by Garcia.
Manny Mota says that this is one of those L.A. phenoms that's not overrated. He's a hard-working kid. Manny says that he's adjusted at every level he's ever been. No reason to think he won't at the big league level. He took the first breaking ball. He waited on the next one up in the zone, and he just simply flipped it over the first baseman's head to give the Dodgers the lead.
RBI number 26 for Beltre. And a high pop fly from Angel Pena. A long run for Warren Morris, and he gets there to catch the fair ball. Dodgers score an unearned run, the go-ahead run on Beltre's base hit. And after 7, the seesaw now back in favor of the home team once more. Top of the 8th inning, Dodgers on top again. They once trailed 3-0. It's now 6-5 LA. Pirates down to their final 6 outs. Pedro Borbon out there for another inning of work. He'll face Mike Benjamin, Al Martin, and Brian Giles. So 2 of the 3 batting from the left side. Trying to get it to Jeff Shaw. And Beltre gets the big RBI, hitting the ball the other way. There's Jeff Shaw just starting to dig in now, getting ready for the 9th inning. Jeff Shaw got to pitch a little bit last night. He had not pitched in a week. When the ball club's going bad, there's not a whole lot of closing for the closer to do.
This has got to be fun for Davey Johnson right here to flip-flop his bullpen the way he wants to do it. He's got, excuse me, Bob, he's got the matchups that he's wanted thus far. You got to get past the light-hitting Mike Benjamin as a right-handed hitter, then the 2 left-handers, then the night of Bourbon will be over with.
And a breaking ball way outside. 1 ball, 2 strikes. One of those sons of major leaguers we have in uniform tonight, 4 of them. And he jams Benjamin, who fouls it away. Mike Benjamin, 1 for 3 tonight with an RBI base hit and a walk. SportsCenter coming up next tonight, right after our ball game. Rich Eisen and Reese Davis with you tonight. They'll look back on the Spurs win this evening. No charges for Bobby Knight, and a preview of the rainy U.S. Open at Pinehurst. Things getting underway tomorrow down there. And, of course, the full menu of Major League Baseball. You'll probably see Jose Canseco's 26th home run sometime during that show. A drive to left, it's foul into the corner. There's somebody with a Dodger uniform playing a little defense here tonight. Nice grab by the ball boy. Nice going, Freddie. 2-2 pitch. Well hit, left center. Devon White after it. He will flag it down. Lloyd McClendon, the Pirates hitting coach, talking about some of the additions that have made this club even better.
I tell you what, we got a little bit more experience over the winter. There's no question about it, particularly in the middle of the lineup, guys that have track records, know what they're doing in RBI situations, so that helps quite a bit. But I don't think we can fool anybody, Rick. We're going to go as far as our pitching takes us, and we really need for our starting pitchers to get healthy for us.
One thing the Pirates will have is a little bit of stability. Right now, they have 12 players locked up on contract through the year 2000. That's got to mean a lot for some of those guys to know they will be there. Kevin Young, a big part of things after A lot of struggles early in his career. Twice released, once by the Pirates. Big curveball. Al Martin can't reach that big hook from Bourbon.
It's so important not to only pick the right type of players to give those contracts to, but the right type of people. Guys are going to take that security for their families and work even harder to prove the organization right.
After the retirement now of ex-Pirate Jeff King, I'm sure the Royals would like to have Kevin Young back. They released him as the second He released him in November of '96 after the Pirates had released him the previous March. 1-2, and it's way outside, ball 2.
Well, Lloyd McClendon deserves a lot of credit for turning Kevin Young around. He told the big, strong guy, he says, right now you're not a power hitter. You're more of a line drive type gap hitter. We got to go back to making good contact first, then the home runs came.
3-2. And a 3-2. Martin takes a curveball way outside. Good at bat for Al Martin to get the tying run on base with one out here in the top of the 8th. Mike Maddox is throwing in case the Dodgers would score 3 runs or more in the bottom of the 8th and make it a non-save situation. If it's a 1-run game like it is right now, we will definitely see Jeff Shaw, or a 2-run game or a 3-run game. He needs a save. Hasn't been out there for a while. Ryan Giles having a good night, 3 for 4. Two RBIs, giving him 39. Brian Giles is one of those guys. He'll do whatever Gene Lamont needs him to do. He was playing right field while Jose Guillen was in the minor leagues. Gladly moved out to center. Been battling a bad hamstring lately. He's in a lot less pain than his manager is, though. There's a big curveball and a foul ball. Plenty of room over there. Carroll's checking, and he's got it. He looked down 2 or 3 times, didn't know where he was, and that's where Dodger Stadium can kill a batter.
One of the few baseball parks in America today where this is not a souvenir for a fan. Eric Karros had a long ways to go. He had some obstacles to overcome. You got the batter's box over there. That piece of tile right there can be slicked from time to time. Normally bats there. There's pine tar rags. There's leaded weights. Karros with good concentration. Second out here in the top of the 8th.
And now with right-hander Kevin Young coming up, we'll see Mike Maddox against him. Tying runs on base with 2 outs in the top of the 8th inning.
ESPN Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Original Coors. There's only one mile-high taste. Coors, the original. And by Suzuki, engineered to fit your life.
Dodger Stadium, top of the 8th inning. Dave Hansen comes in on the double switch to play first base. And on the mound, an early call for the closer, Jeff Shaw. He will take on Kevin Young. Power matchup here. Shaw really, though, not a strikeout pitcher. He relies on ground balls with that good splitter of his.
Shaw throws a lot of strikes. Terrific slider. He can change speeds on it, and he can also change the tilt on it. A lot of times it'll just stay flat and sweep away from a right-handed hitter. There's times that he can get a little downward movement to it as well.
Jeff Shaw's first 10 appearances this year, he was 1-0 with an ERA of 0.68. His next 9, his ERA jumped up to 8.63. Now he's just trying to find enough work with a ball club that's not playing well.
Those ERAs for a short reliever can be so deceiving. And you're only going to go out there for an inning most of the time. In this case, an inning and a third. You have one bad outing, you give up 4 or 5 runs. It takes a while to take the swelling out of that ERA.
1-1 pitch and a half swing, fair ball, and Young's gonna trot down and watch Hansen get him unassisted. Pirates have stranded 11 runners tonight. We go to the bottom of the 8th. Shaw's got 3 more outs to get. 6-5 Dodgers. Bottom of the 8th inning coming up. Dave Hansen on the double switch will lead off. And the left-hander for the Pirates, Jeff Wallace. And Rick, he is one of those arms out of their bullpen that their guys are just raving about. They've got a lot of guys coming out of their pen who throw that fastball in the low to mid-90s.
Yeah, back in '97, he was one of the hardest throwing left-handers in all of baseball. But then the 2 most dreaded words for a pitcher, Tommy John. He had to have elbow surgery. He got it reconstructed. He's back throwing hard once again, but his command is a little bit off. The base on balls total for Mr. Wallace a little higher than what he would like.
Dodgers looking for some 8th inning insurance now. Dave Hansen came in on the double switch. Reliable veteran guy who can play third or first. He's got to try to hang in against some serious left-handed heat right here. Hansen batting .346 on the year, couple of homers, 8 RBIs. And a breaking ball fouled and a half swing. We're just minutes away from SportsCenter on ESPN. Coming up right after we wrap up our doubleheader. Rangers shut out the Yankees earlier tonight, 3-0. Some of you saw Cleveland score in their last at-bat to beat Oakland, 9-8. And that breaking ball's in there. 1 ball, 2 strikes.
Hansen batting .435 this year as a pinch hitter. And just guys like this are remarkable to me. They never have an easy pitcher to go up there and hit off of.
He spoiled a pretty good 1-2 pitch right there.
You know, it's always somebody's closer, you know, who's dominating. Or if you do get to hit off somebody's setup man, it's a guy like this, a left-hander that throws in the mid-90s with a hard slider.
And that's after you've been sitting around for about 2.5 hours. 1-2 pitch.
One of the best that ever existed in baseball coming off the bench like that is one of the Dodger coaches, Manny Mota. Probably a good guy to have around for Mr. Hansen to talk to during the first 8 innings of a ball game.
Fastball runs inside, 3-2. Wallace originally a Kansas City pick in the 25th round back in '95. Three-two, and a fly ball, left center. Giles and Martin converging, and now we'll take that ball slicing back to him. That's the first out in the bottom of the 8th inning. Well, Rick tonight earlier he talked about the Dodgers defense, and then the Pirates betrays them.
There aren't really any simpler throws than that. Able to execute it, then the base hit on the part of Beltre. That's the difference in the ball game right now.
Eric Young is next and takes one off the plate. He's 2 for 4 tonight.
I think both managers tonight have just done a terrific job having the right people in the right situation to succeed. It's just the defense they've not been able to control.
Bouncer up the middle. Charging is Benjamin at the bag. 2 down.
Shortstop, number 5.
Well, they passed up Montreal. Expos had 65. Pirates make 2 tonight, and they've got 66 on the year. By far most in the major leagues now.
But it's a ball club that's going to get better. I mean, you look at it, Kendall, their catcher's 24. Morris is just 25. Kevin Young, 30 today. Giles is 28. Guillen's 23. You got Nunez is 23. I mean, this ball club is going to continue to improve as they develop and mature.
I think we just saw the secret. You got to spit in that glove, make it a little looser, like Kevin Young was doing down there at first base. Jose Vizcaino with a base hit and a run scored tonight.
You spit in your glove when you're 0 for 3 for the night on your birthday. You got to take it out on something.
It's in there, 1-1. Jeff Shaw will face Keith Osick, not Jason Kendall, Freddie Garcia, and Jose Guillen in the Pirate ninth. 1-1 the count. Curveball. Failed to come in the back doors. It stayed down low, 2-1.
You got to challenge him right here. All you got to do is look over in the on-deck circle and see Mr. Sheffield standing there, and you want to make Vizcaino swing the bat.
3-1 now. You've got to make the inning end right here. 1-run game, can't afford to fall behind by more with Jeff Shaw pitching. 3-1 pitch. Right down the middle. A low strike, full count.
That shows you right there how much Davey Johnson wants Gary Sheffield to hit here in this inning. He put the take on with a 3-1 count.
Low, and Sheffield will bat with a runner aboard. Gary Sheffield gets one more chance to break this game open in the bottom of the 8th inning. Tonight's copyrighted telecast presented by authority of the Commissioner of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form. And the accounts and descriptions may not be disseminated without expressed written consent.
That's one of my goals as a broadcaster. I want to read that. I mean, not now, but one of these days.
Hey, you say the word, I'll hand it right to you.
No, I'm not near ready for that yet.
I don't mean I'm going to hand that to you. I had that memorized.
One of those times when we got a long break.
Okay.
To get all that in there.
Maybe we can pre-tape it and just roll the tape.
And not tell anybody?
No.
No, I know. You tell.
We could say moments ago, Rick Sutcliffe with tonight's disclaimer. 0-1 pitch and a breaking ball fouled away. 0-2 to Gary Sheffield. 2 for 3 with a single and a 3-run homer. The big blow of the night. Wow. Diamondbacks again putting some serious offense on the board. And the former Pirate Tony Womack getting the job done. That makes Arizona 40-26, and they've now won 4 straight. Dodgers will have to win, stay 8.5 back. There's a line drive, base hit to left. Gary Sheffield 3 hits, and he's on base for the 4th time. Now Mondesi will bat. Update to the National League West for you now. Diamondbacks reach the 40-win mark. Atlanta's not even there, neither is Houston. So the best record in the National League belongs to the D-backs. Giants won today. Rockies 8. Dodgers 9 at the moment.
Only the Cleveland Indians with a better record in all of baseball than the Diamondbacks.
They are 42-20 with their win tonight.
I thought the San Francisco Giants were just trying to hang close till Barry Bonds got back, and then they'd make their move. That's not been the case. It's the Diamondbacks right now that are making their move.
Yeah, we were there 3 weeks ago, Rick, you and I, and you looked at their schedule and thought that would be about the time they could really make some hay because they were playing some of the weaker teams. And a breaking ball is in there.
Well, the reason I thought that, they had a nice long homestand, And thus far on the year, they're 23-8 at Bank One Ballpark.
Wow. They will be the late game on our ESPN doubleheader next Wednesday night against the Reds. Astros Cardinals will be the first entry in our Wednesday night double dip. Mondesi looking for some insurance here, and he chops one foul. He's in the hole 0-2.
Pete Vukovich, the pitching coach of the Pirates, will sit down after the ball game tonight, possibly tomorrow, with Jeff Wallace, and talk about this inning and say, young man, if you simply would have challenged Jose Vizcaino, none of this might have been possible. All Vuk can do now is just shake his head, point his finger.
There's a guy who will get your attention if he's in your face. 0-2 pitch. And almost thrown away. Mondesi skips over the top of that bouncing breaking ball.
Wait a minute. This is Hollywood, right? Is that Pete Vukovich, or Bob, is that Clue Hayward? Huh?
That's Pete Vukovich.
The movie Major League. Pete Vukovich playing Clue Hayward, playing a little bit of first base. This is Hollywood, right? You never know who you're going to see.
He's still late on the throw to get Willie Mays Hayes at home plate.
Yes, he is.
1 ball and 2 strikes. And a breaking pitch in the dirt. Nikes blocked by Keith Osick. Vizcaino remains at second base.
A simple little thing on the part of Osick right there. It's not going to show up in the box score tomorrow, but what it does is it keeps Vizcaino at second base, and it gives his pitcher an opportunity to bounce that breaking ball again without it possibly costing him a run. Fine job there.
Sequence of signs with Vizcaino looking in. And a 2-2 pitch. Out to short. Benjamin over for the out to Morris. And the Dodgers will strand 10 tonight if they can end it right here. That's the assignment of Jeff Shaw, who's already in the game. And there are the Pirate do-ups in the ninth. They couldn't Dodgers after his 15th save of the year. He really is an amazing story. Jeff Shaw had 9 saves his first 8 years in the big leagues, and then he got 90 over the next 2. He has more saves the last 3 years than any pitcher in baseball. With SportsCenter coming up next, Keith Osick leads off for the Bucks, top 9. 6-5 Dodgers. Ground ball. Well played, Beltre. Tough play. The throw's on target. The rookie's got the potential game-winning hit, and that was not an easy play.
He's going to protect that game-winning hit right there. This is a smart defensive move on the part of Beltre. He knows the ball's hit hard. He knows he's got plenty of time. He simply takes one step back as to get it on a bigger, better hop to field it on. When you're playing in like that, you know you've got a strong arm as he does. You go ahead and get the ball in your glove, then things become simple.
Freddie Garcia next. He's 1 for 4. Jose Guillen after that. This ball ripped into left field. Now the Beltre play looks even better as the tying runs aboard with 1 out here in the top of the 9th inning. Don't forget Sunday night, power to spare. Ken Griffey Jr. and Manny Ramirez. They're both at the top of the league charts in home runs and RBIs over the American League. Our exclusive game of the week, Seattle at the Jake against the Indians. Sunday night at 8. Log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network. Go.com. Now in its 10th year, Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. Jose Guillen next for the Pirates. He's got a 2-hit night going. Good pitch by Shaw on the outside corner. Corbone would be the winner. Quans, who gave up the unlucky unearned run in the 7th, would be the loser for Pittsburgh. We'll play another game of this series tomorrow. Then the Pirates move down to San Diego, and the Phillies come here to L.A. Outside, ball 1. Well, Rick, a wild ball game tonight. Early power by Gary Sheffield after the Pirates took the 3-run lead. And since then, you made the interesting point. Ed Sprague hit out of the ball game, but he'll be okay. Davey Johnson, for a change, has been able to manage this ball club in the last few innings.
And he says for his team to catch the Arizona Diamondbacks, he's going to have that opportunity with his position players as well as his bullpen. He needs to get Hundley back to 100%, and he needs to get Todd Hollingsworth healthy.
1 ball, 1 strike to Guillen. That one runs way inside, ball 2.
Most of the time with Shaw, he will just show you something on the inner half of the plate to try to keep you on it, as he did there with Guillen, getting him to move both of his feet off the plate. Then he'll come back with that good slider on the outer half. If he gets it away, he'll be successful. He leaves it in the heart of the plate. This young man can put a charge into it.
2 balls and a strike. He went fishing upstairs. And some sort of injury to Pena. I don't know if he was hit on the follow-through. He was not hit on the initial swing, or else it would have been catcher's interference. I think the bat came around and just really bopped him on the arm there, as it was a wild swing by Jose Guillen. Oh, does that have to hurt? We'll let you hear it while you watch it. Yeah, the bat came right around and got Pena on the left arm.
Pena's sitting on the inner half of the plate once again. He had to stay in there to catch the ball. Guillen adjusts his swing trying to get to it. Way underneath it right there. See him pull the hands in. Then the top hand came off, and that left nothing but his left arm to slow the bat down. And it wasn't until it made contact with the left elbow of Pena did that bat finally slow down.
Now, if he couldn't stay in, and it appears he will, it would be an interesting scenario. The Dodgers had to call on Todd Hundley. Then you think the Pirates might turn right around and try to steal that tying run to second base. But Pena will be in there. It was his left elbow hit, not his throwing elbow. And a whole ton of things coming your way on SportsCenter. Baseball coverage, of course, but a lot of NBA post-game action and pre-U.S. Open golf coming up next on SportsCenter. Count 2 balls and 2 strikes on Jose Guillen. Jeff Shaw, 23 for Cincinnati last year, 25 saves for the Dodgers, 42 for the Reds 2 years ago. Looking for number 15 here, and a pretty good pitch spoiled by Guillen. Instead again over to first.
You look at the differences in these two ball clubs. Obviously, in the win-loss record, there's a difference there, but a lot of liking club fielding, right there together in club pitching, but a big difference.
Breaking ball, that's Jeff Shaw's slider. And again, Guillen reached out to spoil a pretty good pitch.
That was the thing that Lloyd McClendon told us before the ball game. He said the pitching has been good the last couple of years. Pete Vukovich doing a terrific job. He said the rest of the team is simply just catching up right now. They've added some veterans, but it's going to take the development of youngsters like this, Jose Guillen, for them to get over the top.
Fastball, jam job, pop fly. Vizcaíno is there. 2 down. And Jeff Shaw did a great job of getting inside on the right-handed batter. Pirates are down to their final out. This is the pitcher's spot. Looks like Adrian Brown walking up there. And he's their last available bench player.
Your attention, please. For the Pirates. Now batting for Wallace, number 13, Adrian Brown.
Adrian Brown, 2 for 8 as a pinch hitter this year. Switch hitter swinging from the left side. Now, Freddie Garcia has not attempted a stolen base this year. He's got a moderate lead over there. Shaw delivers. Fastball misses up and away, ball 1. Dodgers trying to break a 4-game losing streak and stay 8.5 back of victorious Arizona tonight. Also trying to even their home record at 16-16. Shaw misses again, 2-0.
Shaw's almost acting like he's worried about Garcia trying to steal second base here. That's not going to happen because of the arm of Pena. He will eliminate most teams' running game. The thing that would bother Davy Johnson right here is that Adrian Brown has no power whatsoever. He's got 10 hits on the year, all of them singles.
Warren Morris, who's on deck, has hit 7 home runs this year. We've got to challenge this guy. And here's the 2-0 pitch. He misses again. 3 consecutive high outside fastballs. And the tying run is 1 pitch away from sitting on second base. Jeff Shaw came into this game with 2 outs in the 8th and got Kevin Young on a half-swing grounder. He misses on 4 in a row, and Freddie Garcia will walk down to second base.
Second baseman,
Nothing is coming easy for the home team at Dodger Stadium these days.
Looking around the baseball field, every single one of the Dodgers just dropped his head in disgust right there, knowing what's possible now for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Warren Morris, much more power than Adrian Brown. 7 homers, 30 batted in. That's a fastball high in the strike zone. Wow. You normally don't see a pitcher who's missing get a call like that. As we look back 3 years to Morris's heroics in Omaha for LSU. Right to the first baseman, Karros, or Hansen rather, and the Dodgers win it as finally Jeff Shaw gets a save. It has been a while. Davy Johnson and the Dodgers hold on to beat the Pirates by a score of 6-5. Sports Center coming up next on ESPN. A lot of baseball, golf, and NBA playoff basketball heading your way. For Rick Sutcliffe and our entire ESPN crew, I'm Bob Carpenter. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com. Good night from Dodger Stadium.